This is SBR's Football Betting Daily.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to SBR Sports Picks. My name is Peter Loshak. This is the Presnap Reads show that we do every Wednesday at 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We take a look at a selection of games from NFL and college football coming up in the upcoming weeks. We are in NFL Week 8 and college football Week 9 right now. Of course, today is October 24th. We are joined to start the show with Ian Cameron and Joe Gavassi. And then later on, of course, in the middle, Al McMorty will make his return to the show later on today. How you guys doing? Ian Cameron, everyone had a losing week last week in this show, but Ian Cameron, your overall record is excellent, 37-24 in this show. Ian Cameron, you are coming off a losing week. Great call on the Purdue game. You had the over and Purdue. You had Mississippi State. Mississippi State outgained LSU, but they lost ATS. Every Sharp and every Sharp's mom had the Bears last week, including me and my mom, including you and your mom, and we all lost. And you also had the Jets, but you had the Jets game over. So it was a half and half week for you, Ian Cameron.
Yeah, you're going to have it. Bound to happen, a losing week last week in football. But hey, 37-24 on the Pre-Snap Read show for the season. That's a great overall picture of the way things have gone. So we're just going to hope we can build on that this week in NFL and college.
Absolutely. And Joe Gavassi, a tough week for you last week, but I do want to remind everyone that the games that Joe Gavassi covers, only 2 of them are games that he picks. The other 2 are games that we assign to him, so they are far from his best bets, far from games that he wants to cover. He very graciously, like a true pro, will cover any game we ask. Ian Cameron doesn't do that. Ian Cameron can give any pick he wants, so that gives Ian Cameron an advantage. Joe Gavassi, overall 12-17 in this show, but how is football season going for you in general?
Well, football season is going pretty well in the college, but not very well in the pros. You know, the good news is that I'm home from the hospital. Here are the wrists. We had the bandages off. Scars are beginning to heal.
All right.
And I'm ready to go forward with a brand new week here in college football. Very excited about this week, number 9 in college football.
Awesome. All right. Joe Gavassi's website is joegavassisports.com. A lot of awesome, very educational information on that site in general. It's just a fascinating read. I highly recommend people visiting it. And Joe Gavassi, like a true professional, taking games that we ask him to cover, whatever we throw at him, he says yes to before he knows what the games are. Yes. Give me whatever you want, and we really appreciate it. Some of these games we throw at you are pretty tough. We're going to throw at you Texas A&M and Mississippi State right now, Joe Gavassi. Now, last week, of course, Mississippi State, they didn't play that badly against LSU, but the final score, of course, showed that LSU covered by a mile. Texas A&M, though, off a bye, 6-1 ATS, beat South Carolina last game. Mississippi State is just a small favorite here. I could see this one going under if we expect another tight defense-oriented, run-heavy game from Mississippi State, and I don't know. I know that the market is telling you Mississippi State, Texas A&M is the ranked team as an underdog off a bye. So maybe the market's telling you to take Mississippi State, but Texas A&M off a bye getting points. That looks pretty tempting to me, Joe Gavassi. What's your take on this one?
I'm going to side with you on the same thing here, Peter, going with the Aggies in this one. When Mississippi State head coach Moorhead came down from Penn State, I'm sure he was expecting a more balanced, explosive offense. Now, the running game has lived up to expectations, and Fitzgerald, their quarterback, is pretty good at that. Throwing the football, not so good for Fitzgerald the last couple of weeks, including the main reason why Mississippi State lost last week when he threw 4 interceptions to the LSU defensive team last week. That'll be tough to beat in any contest in college football. Good rush defense, 115 on 3.2 Overland, and Overland just 14 points a game and a sub-300 defense. However, the Texas A&M rushing defense is even better than that. A top 3 in the land at 78 and 3.1. And of course, Texas A&M has seen at least this good in defense as they have played Clemson and Alabama, their only 2 losses of the year. A&M with quarterback Mond and the coaching, of course, of $75 million man, Jimbo Fisher, has the better offense, the better balanced offense, the more explosive offense. And as a running dog in this game with the extra week of rest, the players playing with double revenge, I'm going to line up with underdog A&M, who I believe is the better team in this one, getting points.
All right, the ranked team getting points. It's a little bit obvious to take Texas A&M here. Maybe the market is setting us up for a trap, and I'm looking at this game. I'm thinking another obvious play, under, written all over it. It has gotten bet down from the opener. The opener was 45.5. Now it's down to 45. Some places with 44.5. The obvious plays here, I think, are Texas A&M, unless you think the market's trying to trap you, and the under. Ian Cameron, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't buy into traps.
No?
I believe in most traps. That's about it. That's the only trap I believe in and think that's real. When it comes to certain lines, like I've bought in before, Pete and Joe, to games where I think they're trying to trap me into taking this team. I take that team and they win. Now, sometimes I'll lose when I think it's a trap line, but I will win sometimes too when I think it's a trap line and I go against it. That's what I'm going to do here. Texas A&M's the better football team. They're in a plus spot here off a bye week. I've had chances and opportunities for Mississippi State to allow themselves to impress me, and I'm still waiting. It's been a disappointment. I'm thoroughly disappointed with this football team because I really like them coming into this season, but it hasn't worked for Joe Moorhead. We've seen Nick Fitzgerald make too many bad decisions. His completion rate is porous. Unless they can run the football, they can't move the football. That's the way it's been for Mississippi State this season. You're facing an A&M team that can stop the run, an A&M team that can run the football themselves offensively. I like Kellen Mond at the quarterback position. He's certainly grown and improved this season compared to last year. And let's be honest, he's being coached by a better guy. I think he was being undercoached by someone. He's not being undercoached anymore by Jimbo Fisher. He's done a pretty good job for A&M this season. Yeah, I think the wrong team here is favored. Mississippi State, what's the proof that they can beat a quality foe? A&M almost beat Clemson. Let's not forget that. Took Clemson down to the wire when very few teams have. So yeah, give me A&M here plus the 2.5. I'll make that one an official play.
Okay, plus 2.5 minus 110. That's a market line. And what about the under? Is that an obvious play too, Ian Cameron? Very quickly.
Yeah, under in theory makes a whole lot of sense, but I get the heebie-jeebies at 44.5 betting a college football game under the total. Anything you can almost get over this number by accident with a pick six, a fumble return, touchdown. It happens so often. So in the theory, it's an under matchup, but the number's pretty low and it indicates that.
All right, next game we're going to cover with Joe Gavassi. Again, a game that we asked him to cover because it's so interesting, not because he looked at this game and said, oh my God, value, I have to tell everyone about this game. Clemson-Florida State. Joe Gavassi, Florida State, of course, is a huge underdog here. I guess that's not a surprise, but they blasted Wake Forest last week. Historically, this has been a close series, even when Clemson has had good teams in the past. And I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking, I don't know, man. 17 points seems like a lot. Florida State, value, what do you think, Joe Gavassi?
Let's flash back here and look a little bit at the history of this series. It was just 5 short years ago that Florida State beat Clemson 51-14. The next year, in 2014, they were a double-digit home favorite. Now, in the next 3 seasons, Florida State has gone to plus 10 on the road, plus 5 at home, plus 16 on the road, to plus 16 or 17 in this game today. Things have turned around drastically for each of these programs as Clemson has risen to one of the top 3 teams in the country and Florida State has gone downward equally quickly. This game would have opened in week 1 with Clemson around a 7-point favorite, but because Clemson is covered by the number by net of 35 points and Florida State failed to the number by minus 45, that's a net of 80 points with approximately 10 points for each point of AFP. This line should be around 15, 16 points, somewhere in there, which is exactly where it is. So I believe the price is very fair. Quarterback Lawrence has stepped in admirably for the Tigers and made Dabo look like a genius with 68% completions and a 12-2 ratio so far for the year to date. This game comes down, in my opinion, to just one thing. Whether Dabo Swinney, now who has risen to number 2, wants to make a statement with the college polls being released for the first time on Tuesday. In years gone by, he's shown some compassion when up by a big number. This year, not so much. And I think that if the defensive line gets turned loose on quarterback Francois for Florida State, could spend more times on his back than upright. I can only look to the Clemson side in this one just based on the fact that Swinney may want to make a point. Florida State has the capability in what could be considered a rivalry game to make this competitive for a while, but depending on what Dabo wants, he can get. I'd have to lean with Clemson in this one.
Wow. Okay, Joe Gavazzi, Clemson minus 16.5, minus 102. Ian Cameron, I'm not sharp, but I do know some sharp guys. I do hang out with some of them, so I know a little bit about them. I know a little bit about how they think, and I would be assuming that they would be attracted to Florida State here getting so many points. It is a suspiciously high line, though. What's your take on this one, Ian Cameron?
Yeah, I took my shot going against Clemson last week, and that did not turn out very well. They completely dominated NC State, who I thought was going to give them a little bit of a battle going into that football game, and it was just domination. I mean, Trevor Lawrence and the offense was humming. Travis Etienne, I think one of the better running backs in college football as well, a great offensive line. Hunter Renfrow as well, great receiver. There's a lot of talent, Clemson, offensively and defensively. That defensive line against a very good NC State offensive line. That's supposed to be one of the better offensive lines, NC State. Clemson had their way in the trenches, just blew up the line of scrimmage repeatedly. That's a problem for me for Florida State in this game. Their offensive line has had some key injuries the last couple weeks. They've been without Landon Dickerson, one of their better O-linemen. He's out indefinitely. Derek Kelly II is questionable to play due to a leg injury. So that's two starting offensive linemen questionable for this game against the strength of this Clemson defense, which is their defensive front. They can absolutely get after it. The question is DeAndre Francois going to have time in the pocket? I'm not sure he will. And after last week's performance, I'm not looking to find reasons to step in Clemson's way. Not involved in this game. It's a pass, but I'm done betting against Clemson after what I saw last week. Florida State showing some signs the last couple weeks, but against Wake, Louisville, some of these signs, they're going to be attested this week by one of the elites.
Yeah. Question on this with this game is just how big is the talent discrepancy here? Ian Cameron thinks that it's unclear enough that he wants no part of it. I can understand that. But Joe Gavazzi, like a true pro, takes any game we ask him to take, and he is going to take Clemson minus 16.5, minus 102. All right, Joe Gavazzi, now let's get into two games that you requested. The first one, Coastal Carolina against Georgia State. Of course, Coastal Carolina popped UMass last week. Georgia State off of 2 extra days of rest. And now they're a dog here. Both quarterbacks here are questionable. I was thinking that maybe Georgia State as a dog might have some value. More so, I was thinking about the under. I know Georgia State is going to be looking to run the ball a little bit more and more effectively in the second half of the season. I'm thinking the under might be the play here. What do you think, Joe?
I'm going to side with Coastal Carolina in this game. Coastal Carolina came online for the first time last season. They were just 3-9 straight up in their first year in the Fun Belt, if you will. They had an inexperienced team. Head coach Joe Moe took the year off with a bronchial infection, but he's now back full force in this one for the year. And the Chants are improving incrementally. They got a Fresno State transfer, quarterback Anderson, who's outstanding, both throwing and running the ball. But even if he doesn't make post here, they had a Frosh quarterback, Peyton, who stepped in last week and was dynamite in lifting the Chants to a 24-13 win when he tossed 2 touchdown passes. Sunbelt isn't known for their defense other than the top 3 teams, and Georgia State is the epitome of that. They allow 37 points a game and 249 yards, both rushing and passing. They give up 7.7 yards per play. This is what we've come to know in the business as a defensive sieve. I think Coastal Carolina can have their way regardless which quarterback it is. And if quarterback Ellington does not make posts for Georgia State, notably their best signal caller, I think this could possibly turn into a rout. Georgia State scores just 24 points a game, even with Ellington in the lineup, and I don't think they can keep up with the Chants today. I like Coastal Carolina to both run and pass for 200 yards, and that translates into a 75% point spread winner, according to my point spread prognosis numbers.
All right, minus 3.5, minus 109 is the line we can give you, Joe Gavazzi. Sounds like your analysis indicate we might glean from that a play on the under might be a little bit shaky. It is a high total. I'm assuming, Joe Gavazzi, you wouldn't like a play on the under because of what you said about Georgia State's defensive issues.
I would not play the under here. I believe the Chants are capable of putting up a big number in the 40s, and that may just drag Georgia State up as well if the Chants defense lets down a bit.
All right, Ian Cameron, this is a lesser game. Did you look into any situations here that might indicate betting value on one side or the other?
Yeah, I have no official play on this game, but definitely lean in Joe's direction here with Coastal. I mean, their defense was impressive. That's been the one little weak link with Coastal, but their defense stepped up against a very complex UMass Minutemen offense last week that employs a two-quarterback system. Andrew Ford and Blake Comas, or Ross Comas, I should say, and Mark Whipple, their head coach, was suspended before that, came back on the sideline, was ready to coach an offensive scheme and game plan. And for Coastal Carolina to go on the road, and this team's done a lot of traveling the last few weeks, to go on the road and shut down that offense was a very, very impressive feat. They got their senior quarterback, Kilton Anderson, back in that football game last week. He was very good, and I think he's going to continue to be good. You look at the difference between Coastal Carolina's offensive production with and without him on the football field this season. It's been drastic. Now that they have him back, I think that offense is going to be able to roll. My one concern is the spot. They're on the road again here. They've been doing a lot of traveling. I'm worried they maybe hit a physical and mental wall, but I'll tell you what right now, I don't want Georgia State. If I'm playing, I'm with Joe, and I'm laying it with Coastal Carolina. But
yeah, I'm thinking about the under here, Ian Cameron. I think you're right. You know, Georgia State has 2 extra rest days, so their defense should be a little bit healthier, presumably. Like you said, it's not a great travel spot for Coastal Carolina, and Coastal Carolina's defense is looking great. Again, they held UMass down to 13 points last week. That's very impressive. Both quarterbacks here are questionable. The under, you don't like it, Ian Cameron?
I was scared with Coastal Carolina and Georgia State for that instance. Look, they gave up 51 points last week, 38 points the week before that. That's problematic if you like an under in the 50s, in my opinion.
I'm on the cusp of taking the under, but let's move on. Next game we're going to discuss with Joe Gavazzi. Army against Eastern Michigan. Now, Army, of course, went to OT in Miami, but lost ATS. They did get the win. I had Army in that one. Terrible call. I did have the over, but I got bailed out because of OT. So maybe I don't have a great read on these Army against MAC team showdowns. Eastern Michigan, a very impressive team in general, right? A pretty undervalued team this year. And Army, of course, does have their showdown against Air Force next week. Now, does a team like Army look ahead to a situation like that? Maybe not, but they are coming off an OT game. I'm thinking maybe Eastern Michigan's the play here. What do you think, Joe Gavazzi?
I'm on the other side here. I'm on Army. Okay. Just like we have 200 club games that cash 75% of the time, so do double rushers. Any team who double rushes an opponent, 2-1 margin, 75% winner this millennium. And I expect just such to happen again in this game today. Just like Army may have a potential look ahead to Air Force, and I'm not sure Army does, as you pointed out. Eastern Michigan must certainly be looking forward to the rest of the MAC slate. In fact, remaining games for Eastern Michigan are all winning games where they'll be favored against Central Michigan, Akron, and Kent. I could even see them holding back a little bit in this non-conference game to get a good winning record in the conference and certainly a bowl bid. Yes, they can put up the ball behind head coach Creighton and Weigers. He's a good quarterback. He can pass it, but they don't have any rush defense, and that is dead meat against Army because you can't do what without the what. You cannot score without the football.
There you go.
And that's exactly the problem that Eastern Michigan is going to have today. Could be 40 minutes time of possession by Army today, and if it isn't 40, it means Army scoring fast. Army, let's look at the numbers here right now, averaging 314 yards per game rushing and almost 5.0 yards per rush, while Eastern Michigan allowing 214 overland and 5.0. Give me the 5.0 rusher against the 5.0 defense any day as an underdog, and I'll take Army to the bank in that role today with a 75% chance to cover the spread in my estimation.
All right, +2 -110. Like the Miami-Ohio game, which I did cash, but got lucky on with the over. I'm leaning over here as well. And Ian Cameron, like the Miami-Ohio Army game, I thought maybe Miami-Ohio would be looking ahead to the rest of the MAC, schedule and not necessarily caring about that game. But obviously that wasn't the case. But Joe Gavazzi just made the argument that might be in play here with Eastern Michigan, although they're at home. What's your take on this one, Ian Cameron?
Why it's in play here, I think, with Eastern Michigan is because this is a triple option offense.
Right.
You have basically your standard week to prepare for here. And I'm not sure how much Chris Creighton and this Eastern Michigan team said before the season. Oh, we got Army. This is ridiculous scheduling, too, if you ask me. You're right in the heart of conference season, and you're going to put this dopey Eastern Michigan Army game right in the middle of conference season here. Absolutely boggles my mind. I can't think for a second Eastern Michigan's been thinking long and hard before the season, even before the last couple of games. Let's think about Army ahead of time with this triple option. And as Joe mentioned, they've been a terrible run defense this season, absolutely horrible. And I like this Army team. When your only 2 losses this season have come against Duke and Oklahoma, you're doing something right. And the loss against Duke in the very first game of the season, I don't fault Army for that. David Cutcliffe and Duke have a track record of shutting down triple option offenses. He's got a tremendous track record against triple option teams. Look at what Duke did to Georgia Tech a couple weeks ago. Shut them down. He just knows how to game plan and scheme and take away a triple option offense. So Army losing to Duke, no problem. Oklahoma, they took them right to the wire. That's the only 2 losses here. I'm with Joe. I'm going to make this official. I think Army wins this football game. Eastern Michigan can't stop the run. Give me Army in this game.
All right, Joe Gavassi and Ian Cameron both taking Army +2. We'll see how this one turns out. Once again, Joe Gavassi's picks: Texas A&M +2.5, Clemson -16.5, Coastal Carolina -3.5, and Army +2. So far, Ian Cameron has agreed with Texas A&M +2.5 and Army +2. Joe Gavassi's website is joeGavassiSports.com. So glad to see you back and healthy from the hospital, Joe Gavassi. Joe Gavassi's website is great. You should read it. A lot of, aside from all the picks that are on that site, a lot of just great in general information and articles that you can read that are very interesting and informative at joeGavassiSports.com. Joe Gavassi, thanks so much. We'll talk to you again next week.
I appreciate it, Peter. Very nice words from you.
Yes.
And I'll look forward to you guys again in what is every week one of my favorite hours of the week.
Oh.
Good luck out there, guys.
We love having you,
Thanks, Joe. Glad to see you doing well, Joe. Take care.
Thank you. Talk to you guys soon.
So we got Al McMorty coming up in a few minutes, but before Al McMorty comes, Ian Cameron sent me a bunch of games that he is liking. Yes. Ian Cameron, you ready to talk about some of these games with me?
Rapid fire. Let's let her rip.
Rapid fire. Let's let her rip. Okay, let's start with Arizona State, USC. Arizona State off 2 extra rest days. USC kind of banged up. USC lost at Utah. Arizona State has a lot of players from the USC area. I'm thinking maybe under, maybe Arizona State plus the points. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I liked USC a lot early in the week, and until I heard that JT Daniels may or may not go, he's in concussion protocol. If that's the case and doesn't play, it will be turned into Jack Sears for his first start at the quarterback position for USC. I'm going to go ahead with this regardless of who suits up at quarterback. I'm going to lay the points with USC. You look at what they've done here so far this season. They lost to Texas, no shame in that. Lost to Stanford, no shame in that. They've really been Utah last week, no shame in that. 3 very tough teams with 3 very good defenses, especially in the case of Texas and Utah. I think USC bounces back here. I didn't like the way Arizona State lost that game against Stanford. That was a winnable game, that Thursday night home game. If they don't mismanage the clock in such a terrible fashion late in that game, they could have won it. And you're starting to see Arizona State hit a wall a little bit. Nice little start. They beat UTSA and Michigan State at home to begin the season. It's been a little bit of a downward slide for them. They're 1-4 straight up their last 5 games. The only win came against bottom feeder in the Pac-12, Oregon State. That's not saying a whole lot. And USC's been good at home. Perfect 3-0 straight up at home this season. They've been good at the Coliseum. Good wins at home, too. They beat Colorado at home. They beat Washington State at home. How good's that Washington State home win now look for USC, considering the way the Cougars have played the last not just the last few weeks, but all season. So I think USC is the class in this game. They're going to show their superiority regardless of which quarterback is in there for them. I think their defense will finally rise up against this inconsistent Sun Devils offense. So give me USC here minus the 6.5.
All right. Well, we're going to give you -6. That's the current line at where is it? Current line somewhere. I did see -6.
Bookmaker, Chris.
Yes, Bookmaker has -6. We'll give you that one. I'd love to talk more about this game, but I want to hit up one more game with you, Ian Cameron. UAB and UTEP, right? UTEP winless, but covered 4 out of their last 5 at the IFBC. I was joking around with Big Man on campus about that I like UTEP win total under 2.5. I was joking around. I said to him, do you see 3 wins? He said, no. I said, do you see 1 win? He said, no. But UTEP has clearly been undervalued recently. I have been on them against the spread. I think I like them again this week, getting 16 at against UAB. What do you think, Ian?
Yeah, you know what? I think we're in a situation here where I like UTEP, and I am I realize how good UAB is. I realize they look right now like the class of this Conference USA. That was a big-time win for them last week and against North Texas, two very good teams in this conference. But the way I'm looking at this now is UAB's now going on the road. Little old Texas El Paso on the road laying 16. This looks like a sleepy kind of spot for UAB. For as good as they've been, this is not a UAB spot. Not even maybe. Now, maybe they've just been so good of a point spread team and their defense has been great and A.J. Erdeley's been a solid quarterback for them. Maybe that's still just a little bit too much and they can overcome this, what's clearly to me a dubious spot off such a big win against a mediocre opponent. And you look at UTEP, they haven't won a game. We don't care about that. We care about, are you cashing tickets? Are you winning against the number on a weekly basis? 3-0 against the spread their last 3 games. The last 2 games, single-digit margins of defeat. Against North Texas and Louisiana Tech, 2 of the better teams in Conference USA. This team's making strides. This is a bottom feeder that's still being, they're being priced like a bottom feeder, but they're not truly playing like a bottom feeder the last couple of weeks. They've been competitive. They catch UAB in maybe a little bit of a flat spot here. I realize I know the risk of going against UAB for as good as they've been, but I don't like the spot for them. UTEP's been an under-the-radar ticket casher the last few weeks, so I'm going to take UTEP here plus 16 in this game.
All right, plus 16, minus 108 is Ian Cameron's play on the UTEP against UAB. And now we are going to welcome Al McMorty from BigAl.com. Al McMorty, you there? There he is. Oh, how's it going with you, Al McMorty? How has your football season been going so far, and particularly recently?
Last week was a 50-50 week for us overall. We were on that hot streak. We were 41-15 the previous 2 weeks on all of our plays, so we were due to have kind of a cool down period. But still now 59-32 our last 91. So I've got absolutely no complaints. The football season's been going great. We're 26-14 on our top football plays this year. Those are the games rated 3 stars and higher. And over the past 2.5 years, our top football plays are up 154 stars. So it's been great.
All right. Well, last week you gave us some great calls. Carolina +5, Purdue +13.5, and Minnesota -3. Those are all plays you gave us last week. Thanks so much, Al McMorty. Great calls. You also gave us Jacksonville Jaguars -5. Horrible call there, but thank you so much overall. Al McMorty, let's see what you have for us this week. The first game we're going to cover, Wisconsin-Northwestern. Right now, Wisconsin blasted Illinois. Northwestern beat Rutgers, but lost by a mile against the spread. I gave out Rutgers Monday morning on the Low Shack in the Bag show. I said 20.5 points, way too many. I'm proud of that. I don't always make great calls like that, but that one did happen last week. I was fading Northwestern last week. This is a tough one now, though. Northwestern definitely one-dimensional offensively, and Wisconsin, big problem in the secondary. Can Northwestern take advantage of that? I'm not convinced. Northwestern, a big home dog, totals of 51. I'd be leaning under. Al McMorty, what do you like here?
Well, Peter, you're right. This is a tough game. Currently there are 4 teams in the Big Ten West Division with just 1 loss. You've got Northwestern, Iowa, Purdue, and the Wisconsin Badgers. So this Saturday's game is going to go a long way toward determining which team emerges out of those 4 to reach the Big Ten championship game in December. And certainly Wisconsin is the more talented team of these 2. But it's hard for me to turn down a touchdown being given to a home team in matchups between teams that own winning conference and winning overall records. And since 1991, such home teams have gone 124-80 against the spread. And even worse, Wisconsin's an awful 2-11 ATS as an unrested road favorite of -6.5 or more points versus conference foes off a straight-up win. Big factor for me here is the home field for Northwestern and getting the touchdown. I've got to take that side.
All right, it is a split line, 7 or 6.5, but Will Hill does have +7, -110. I would be leaning under here. Ian Cameron, what do you think about this?
Yeah, when I'm looking at it, when I'm looking at a Northwestern game, my first thought is just take the underdog. Just do it. I mean, the underdog has been just a phenomenal spot and a phenomenal play in every. I think the underdog. I'm pretty darn sure about this. I think the underdog's covered in every Northwestern game this season, and it did again last week. If you took Rutgers plus all of those points, I'm definitely taking Northwestern here because I don't trust Alex Hornibrook on the road. We've seen this Wisconsin offense look plodding, look pedestrian at times on the road. Let's not forget, okay, it's Michigan. Michigan's been really good. They got their doors blown out. They didn't even look like they belonged on the same field as Michigan the last time they were on the road. I know their defense is pretty solid. I know Northwestern, without Larkin, you're always concerned about that ground game. I'm seeing Clayton Thorson actually play better. It looks like he's taken more onus, been a little bit better, saying, I got to be better in the passing game to make up for this, and the scatter shot ability we have with the run. And so far, he has played better. And he got Northwestern at home. Remember, let's not forget, they went on the road and beat Michigan State as an underdog a few weeks ago. I think they're live in this game. If they win outright, doesn't shock me. I mean, Wisconsin to me looks like they're down a little tick from past seasons. I'll go Northwestern here and make that official at +7 as well.
All right, +7, -110. And just very quickly, Ian Cameron, you're talking about the Texas A&M game, how you don't really want to take the under there, even though you would lean that way because 44, anything can happen. This looks like a similar type game, except we're not looking at 44, 45. We're looking at 51. Is the under not a good play here, Ian?
The under does make a lot more sense here. You're getting a little bit of a higher number to work with. You can avoid those little defensive miscues and a special team score that you don't see coming, hurting your cause. So, yeah, I think this is a game where both defenses step up. I could see something in the realm of, 21-17, something like that, 27-23 even, which would stay under the total, something like that.
All right, well, I'm leaning under. I'll hold off on making an official pick right now. And Al McMorty, like Joe Gavassi, does take games that we ask him to cover. Really appreciate that, Al McMorty, because those are some of those games we ask you to cover are definitely games that, you might wish that you could just pass on, where you don't feel like you have an edge necessarily. But I appreciate that you take them. Al McMorty, now let's move on to a second college football. Was that Northwestern game one of those games, Al McMorty, where you wish that you could really just lay off of it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Right. I hear you, Al McMorty. There you go. Shout out to Al McMorty, BigAl.com. All right. So the next college football game we're going to talk about is a game that you chose, though. Purdue against Michigan State. Purdue, of course, beat Ohio State outright, and that was one of your plays with us last week. Al McMorty, you like Purdue. Ian Cameron liked Purdue. Great call, guys. Now they're going up against Michigan State. We know Michigan State has offensive problems. How are they going to move the ball here? I can't tell you how Michigan State's going to move the ball here, but when I look at this spot, I'm thinking Michigan State as a small home favorite. My gut tells me, based on zero numbers, zero research, my gut tells me Michigan State might be the play here. What do you like, Al?
Well, as you mentioned, Peter, last week, I gave my clients a big play on the Purdue Boilermakers. They were a double-digit home underdog to then unbeaten Ohio State, and they easily got the cash when Purdue romped by 29 points over Ohio State. So let's put Purdue's win into context. As you know, I've got a tremendous football and basketball database, probably the best database in the world. Since 1980, there have been 907 games played by teams like Ohio State that were undefeated after 7 or more games. And of those 907 games, there were only 3 other times that those unbeaten teams were blown out and failed to cover the point spread by 41 or more points. Interestingly, all 3 of the other teams that pulled off those 3 huge upset, blowout wins. The next week, they were favored by 4, 7, and 13.5 points. And those 3 teams that pulled off the upsets lost by 24, 7, and 24 points. So those 3 teams then the next week failed to cover the spread by an average of 26.5 points a game, which is astounding. As handicappers, we have to be students of history. I see the exact same thing happening to Purdue off that monumental win. Historic win last week. I think Purdue gets blown out by Michigan State.
That's what I was thinking. I may not have a database going back to 1980, but I do have a gut. And my gut told me that in this spot, even though I can't make a cogent argument for it or point to any stats, I would be thinking that Michigan State would be the play here. Interestingly, Michigan State opened as a dog, got bet all the way up to 2.5, and now money's coming back on Purdue. The line is all over the place, 2, 1.5, or 1. Al McMorty liking Michigan State here, so we can give you the bet online line, which is -1, -115. My gut is telling me that is the right side. Ian Cameron, what do you think?
If I had any more faith in Purdue off that kind of monumental win, I would absolutely be on Purdue one more time here, even though I was on them again last week. I don't like Michigan State at all. I think they deserved what they got last week. Michigan was a better football team. I'm mad at myself. I didn't lay the 7. I only didn't lay the 7 because of Michigan State's dominance straight up in ATS in recent years against Michigan. But I said Michigan's finally going to get him this year. Finally going to get him. And of course, I don't bet him. So who's the idiot? Me. But yeah, Michigan ended up.
I had Michigan last
ended
week.
up taking. Good for you, Pete. It was a
Thank you.
good
I also had Penn State,
They're the
though,
better
so,
team.
yeah.
Better team with the better quarterback. And Patterson was much better than Lewerke. And now Lewerke coming into this week's got a banged up shoulder. He's going to play, but he's going through a shoulder injury coming into this game. Defensively, I don't like what I see from Michigan State quite as much. They've had offensive line difference. They've had a different starting O-line almost every week this season due to injuries. That's a problem. But why am I stopping short of taking Purdue again? Because the spot truly does stink. And that was the biggest win this program's had in probably a decade. And these not players used to those kind of big-time wins on that stage, at home, ABC, primetime television against mighty Ohio State. I'm not ready to trust them just yet to play to that level of focus and intensity off that monstrous type of win. I just can't. I want to take Purdue again because I don't trust Michigan State one bit. But the spot is just so bad, I'm not going to do it. So it's a pass. Lean Purdue, but it's a pass.
All right. Well, I'm going to make this one an official play. I'm going to join Al McMorty. Michigan State -1, -115. How are they going to put points on the board? I don't know, but I think we'll see them one way or the other. Al McMorty taking Michigan State -1, -115. Now let's move to NFL. The first game that we're going to talk with Al McMorty about is a game that we asked him to cover. Jets against the Bears, of course. The Jets beat down by the Vikings last week. The Bears, every Sharp and every Sharp's mom had the Bears last week. It was going back and forth. It seemed like both teams wanted to give the game away, and eventually the Pats wound up covering. 4 straight overs for the Jets, 3 straight overs for the Bears. Maybe we like an over here. Are the Bears that much better that they should be giving 7 points here? What do you think, Al?
Well, as you just mentioned, both of these teams have been involved in a lot of very high-scoring games of late. The Jets lost last week, 37-17 at home to Minnesota. The previous week, they defeated Indianapolis 42-34. Meanwhile, Chicago, I was one of the Sharps that was on Chicago. I confess. Chicago lost to the Patriots 38-31 last Sunday at home. They were upset 31-28 by the Dolphins 2 weeks ago. So overall, as you did mention, the New York Jets have played their last 4 games over the total. The Bears over 3 in a row. The knee-jerk reaction, of course, would be to look at the over in this ballgame, but I actually foresee a relatively low-scoring game. Indeed, the under has cashed 63% over the past 25 seasons in games with over-under lines greater than 42 between two teams whose last 3 games have each combined for 145 points while also going over the total. I think this is just one of those games where the offense takes a holiday. I'm going to take the under.
All right. It's 44.5, 45. The Greek has 45.5, so we'll give you that one. Under 45.5, -110. And I've said this for a long time, Al McMorty. Whenever there's a total that looks obvious one way and you give reasons for liking the opposite way, the counterintuitive way, those are some of the strongest plays that I ever hear you recommend. Under 45.5, -110. Jets, Chicago. Ian Cameron, what do you think?
Yeah, this might have to be we can't have a show without a disagreement at some point. I've been riding Jets over 2 weeks in a row, and I'm going to do it again. This secondary is just too banged up, in my opinion. There's too many guys out. Marcus May's out, been missing. Trumaine Johnson's been out. Buster Screen's been out, and everybody's throwing the football at will against this New York Jets pass defense right now. We saw Kirk Cousins light up this secondary. We saw Andrew Luck light up this secondary. Now, Mitchell Trubisky, can he do that? Now, that is definitely maybe a little bit more of a leap of faith, because we've seen this guy be a turnover machine at times, saw it against New England. I think all 3 of us can commiserate about the Chicago loss last week. I think everybody and his brother was on Chicago last week against New England. I know all 3 of us were, but again, that game was winnable for Chicago. Unfortunately, a block punt return for a touchdown. Trubisky with a couple of poorly timed interceptions at bad times and bad spots on the field. And Chicago could have won that football game still. And, of course, the Hail Mary desperation at the end comes up 1 yard short. Incredible stuff. But I think they're going to be able to move the ball. I just think the Jets are too banged up defensively. Sam Darnold has not been able to transfer his offense at home to on the road just yet, other than Detroit in week 1. I think he's getting better, though. He's getting more comfortable. He's making some good throws. He's been a lot more accurate, a lot more decisive with his decision making. The total's crept down. Like I say, I've cashed Jets over two times in a row. Maybe not quite as strong this week, but strong enough that I'm going to go ahead and bet over Jets and Bears and make that one official.
All right. Yeah. Last week, of course, the win mattered for Darnold. There was dropped passes. It did seem like the Jets should be significantly better going forward offensively than what we saw from them last week. And this is a split line. Line chopping is vital, essentially important in sports betting. Of course, we're going to be able to give you over 44.5 -115. That's the current line at Pinnacle and Bet Online. So if this line lands on 45, which is entirely possible, considered a key number in totals in the NFL, both Al McMorty and Ian Cameron will cash. Al McMorty liking Bears under 45.5 -110. Ian Cameron's going to take the over 44.5 minus 115. All right, Al McMorty, the last game we're going to talk with you about is an NFL game that you chose, Washington against the Giants. The Giants are on a short week. They played Monday night. They have a bye next week. Washington off of 2 nice low-scoring wins at home, and I don't know what to make of the Giants. I know sometimes when Eli Manning looks like he's completely cooked, he comes out and then all of a sudden has 1 or 2 games where all of a sudden he's great again, and you're wondering where that came from. But just the way he looks on the field, he just looks like he needs some help. He needs some help. You know what I mean? Just getting around, just bending down, standing up, moving left, moving right. Maybe I'm overreacting, but I'm not going to be able to take the Giants with confidence until Eli Manning isn't the quarterback. What do you like here, Al McMorty?
Well, the key factor for me is that the Redskins come into this game off back-to-back upset wins at home versus Carolina and Dallas. Admittedly, they weren't big underdogs in the game, but they were underdogs nonetheless. They've now been installed as a road favorite versus a Giants team on a 4-game losing streak. But unfortunately for the Redskins, teams off back-to-back upset wins are an awful 52-77 ATS going all the way back to 1980 versus opponents off back-to-back losses. Likewise, teams off back-to-back straight-up and against the spread wins, as well as an upset win in their previous game. Those teams are 28-47 ATS versus opponents off 4 or more defeats. And then, of course, the New York Giants are a pretty solid 37-21 ATS at home versus division rivals off a point spread win. I'm going to take the New York Giants, notwithstanding the fact that Eli does look very shaky.
Yeah, all right. Well, the market is right now uncertain about this. It's +1, pick'em, and -1 all over the place. So we can give you +1, -110. That is currently available at UWager. A lot of pick'ems. Heritage is already up to a -1 for the Giants. Ian Cameron, I like the Giants. I love the Giants as a team. It's just Eli Manning, just watching him, he just doesn't pass the eye test. What do you think, Ian Cameron?
Well, of course he doesn't pass the eye test. He looks like a statue in the pocket. He looks like one of those prehistoric dinosaurs that's extinct. Needs to be put out of its misery. That's what Eli Manning looks like right now at this point in time. I mean, the guy looks like an old man that needs to be put in the retirement home, the nursing home. I mean, can he move? Can I get a little mobility? Can I get a little bit of a slide step in the pocket from time to time? Can I ask for that? Eli Manning? Apparently
you can
not.
ask for it. You ain't going to get it, Ian
I'm not
Cameron.
going to get it.
But you can ask
exactly.
For it. Yeah.
I mean, and that's the concern. I mean, any sort of pass rush that is fierce, that can overwhelm an offensive line, and clearly you can overwhelm the Giants' offensive line. That's the issue. I'd look under in this game before I look at anything else. I will say this. I'm concerned about the spot here for Washington. Even though I think they're a little bit better than the Giants, especially at quarterback, their performances on the road this year have not matched their performances at home. And that's a concern for me going into this game. I want, honestly, nothing to do with this game, but the under does make a little bit of sense. So lean only, though, for me with that.
All right, so no official play from you, Ian Cameron and Al McMorty. We've covered the 4 games you want to cover. Al McMorty will take Northwestern +7 and the Bears under 45.5 on the 2 games that we asked him to cover. And then Michigan State -1 and the Giants +1 are the 2 other games that Al McMorty himself requested. I'm happy that we have about 15 minutes now, 15 extra minutes, because there's a bunch of games that Ian Cameron wanted to get to. Al McMorty, if you have anything to say about any of these games, feel free to chime in. If you want to give an official pick, that's great. If not, feel free to pass. I'm interested to hear what Ian Cameron has to say about the games that he has requested. The first one, the Friday night game, right? Louisiana Tech and Florida Atlantic. Florida Atlantic, obviously not the same team that they were last year. Second off a bye. Louisiana Tech has not had a bye yet, and 2 of their last 3 games, they were not as good as you would have hoped, right? They don't really inspire confidence. I'm not sure if I'd want to take FAU here as a favorite, but that is how I'd be leaning, and I might be leaning the under. There's a lot of injuries for FAU. It might be a little bit of a conservative game from both teams, and I'd be leaning under, leaning FAU. Why'd you choose this game, Ian?
I chose it because I think Louisiana Tech's going to win outright. I think they're the better football team. I think Florida Atlantic is, I don't want to say they're completely shot, they're completely done, but to me it looks like they are. They haven't been able to tackle worth a damn this season. Their defense has been horrible. Their quarterback play has been spotty. Thompson, the quarterback's banged up again going into this game. They just lost arguably their best defensive player in the game in Florida Atlantic's last game. He's out for the season. And Louisiana Tech, was kind of upset that Florida Atlantic ran up the score against them last year. That's not going to be forgotten by Skip Holtz's team. I think they feel we're better than this team now. Jamar Smith, the quarterback's been very good for Louisiana Tech. They've been pretty solid team in this conference. Skip Holtz has been an excellent underdog in his career. You take points over the years with Skip Holtz at Louisiana Tech. You've done very well. ATS over the years with him in the underdog role. I actually think they win this game outright. 3.5 points is a bonus for me. I'll take the Bulldogs here. La Tech plus 3.5.
All right, well, we can give you plus 3.5, minus 110 at Intertops. Very interesting. Ian Cameron, Al McMorty, Friday night game. You have anything to say about this one?
I don't. I'm going to probably stay away from the game as of this point in time.
Okay, and now let's move on to UNC and Virginia. This is a very interesting game. Of course, Virginia was getting big points against Duke last week, and I didn't expect the margin win by Virginia, but I definitely thought that anything over a touchdown was great value with Virginia, and I did talk about that. I did give that one as an official pick last week in the Low Shack in the Bag show, and I gave it early on Monday. I said that I believe I did. I said that I definitely bet it on the opening line that Virginia was getting too many points. I also leaned under. Now though, they're at home against UNC. UNC's coming off of the OT loss at Syracuse. Virginia's been great ATS, but they're giving big points now. They're a great team, undervalued team to date, but I'm not quite sure if they're the kind of team that has a profile that should be, giving more than a touchdown to a quality opponent. What do you like here, Ian Cameron?
Yeah, I'm going to go underdog here again. North Carolina, North Kakalaki, the Tar Heels. I mean, this team hasn't given up on their season yet. They're still fighting the good fight and did it against two solid teams in the ACC. Took Virginia Tech down to the wire, took Syracuse to overtime last week. With a play here and a play there, they win both of those football games. I still think they should have beat Virginia Tech a couple of weeks ago and just made some bad plays offensively and ended up costing them in the end. I like Virginia a lot, but we've seen Virginia in this price range. They're not always something you want to trust. The Cavaliers, even though they've had a very solid season, great win for them last week against Duke. Very, very impressive stuff, shutting down that Duke offense completely. But North Carolina can move the ball. That's the one thing I like about underdogs in this price range. Even if North Carolina gets behind by double digits, they have the offense to come through the back door if need be. I think they stay within this number. They're fighting the good fight. They've been good in this underdog role now a couple weeks in a row. Let's go back to that underdog well with the Tar Heels and Larry Fedora's squad this week.
All right, +9, minus 106 is the current line at Pinnacle. That's what I was thinking as well. UNC is coming off of the overtime loss at Syracuse, which is not great, but a lot of points to be giving Virginia. Al McMorty, anything on this one?
Well, I generally don't like to take teams that were big underdogs and had close losses, as was the case with North Carolina. Those teams generally underwhelmed the next week after those kind of close but no cigar kind of games. Virginia's been strong at home this year. North Carolina has not been strong away from home. I would take Virginia or nothing in this ballgame.
Okay, but no official pick from Al McMorty. But if you had no official pick, but if you gave him a free play, he would put it on Virginia minus the points. All right, the next game, Ian Cameron's going to cover Boise State against Air Force. Right, Boise State last week. Ian Cameron, you did like Colorado State, and Boise State did show up offensively. Now they're going up on the road against Air Force. Typically, they have not done well here. Air Force though has the Army game coming up next week. Boise definitely benefited from turnovers though against Colorado State. The yardage was kind of even. The triple option has caused big problems for Boise State historically. I know though they've been practicing it this year. It's been something that they wanted to focus on. Those are the reports coming in from camp. I guess I'd be leaning Air Force getting this many points, and I'd be leaning under. I'm thinking that maybe Boise State will be able to contain the option at least a little bit, and if they can, maybe possessions will be reduced and the game goes under. What do you think, Ian Cameron? Why'd you choose this game?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, Colorado State last week just got behind big early, and they fought hard right till the end, but unfortunately, they just couldn't make up that big deficit, and Boise State ends up with the win and cover. And maybe I'm guilty of, pounding my head against the wall trying to go against Boise State for a second straight week, but damn it, I'm going to try. Air Force is the way I'm looking in this game as they travel to Colorado Springs here in this game. Tell you what, Air Force has given this Boise team fits over the years. You look back at the recent series history, Boise State's had trouble going into Air Force. 5-1 ATS for Air Force, last 6 meetings against Boise State. What I like about Air Force is they're a tough out. They haven't lost a game by more than 10 points this season. They took San Diego State right down to the wire, another one of the better teams in this Mountain West Conference. And I know you mentioned a good point with Air Force having Army, Battle of Service Academies on deck. I don't look at this as a look ahead for them. I mean, this is Boise State. This is one of the premier programs in this conference. They've dominated this conference for a decade. I can't see Air Force walking onto the field as disciplined service academy men that they are saying, oh, you know what, we got Army on deck, Boise State, who cares? No, I think they care. This is a premier team in this conference. It has been for a long time. I think they show up for this game. Boise State, last time they were on the road, it was against Nevada. Life and death to win that game, covering as 2 touchdown favorites on the road against Nevada. Only win that game 31-27. They've shown some vulnerability. The 2 key defensive injuries that Boise State suffered a couple weeks ago, season-ending injuries, they're starting to show. They still gave up a lot of points to Colorado State last week. They've allowed 55 points in the last 2 games combined. Falcons, to me, at home, catching this number, I think they can hang and maybe even threaten to win outright.
All right, it opened at 10. It's now a split line 9 or 9.5, so we can give you plus 9.5, minus 110 market wide. I would agree with that. I got to be thinking about the under here, and as well the Boise State team total under, maybe. Al McMore, do you have anything to say about this one?
Yeah, not about this game specifically, just generally. You know, you talked about this being a look ahead to the Air Force Army game. I just wanted to point out, I've researched this. There's no data whatsoever that suggests that there's any meaning to be drawn for look aheads. It's irrelevant. It's noise. There are letdowns after games. There's no, don't even look at the look ahead. That's garbage. A lot of times people will say, oh, this is a sandwich game. They play this team, the next week, and they're coming off this game. Doesn't matter who they're playing the next week. Look aheads are meaningless. That's my pet peeve. Anyway, nothing game other.
Very, very valuable. Al McMorty. Okay, so Ian Cameron taking Air Force officially plus 9.5. I'd be agreeing with that. Definitely leaning under. Definitely leaning Boise State team total under as well. All right, Ian Cameron. Now we're going to move to the NFL games that you wanted to talk about. First one, Tampa Bay against Cincinnati. The Bucs beat the Browns in OT last week. This is the Bengals' last game before the bye. Of course, they got destroyed against KC. I'm not sure. Bucs have lost 4 in a row against the spread. Maybe this is a spot where they cover, though. Catching points against Cincinnati. Why'd you pick this game, Ian Cameron? Oh, no. Oh, no. What's going on?
There we go. Sorry, muted. You can hear me now. We're back.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
muted. Sorry
okay.
about that.
We've got Ian Cameron back. All right, I'll cue you again. Yeah. Ooh, thank God. Ooh, that made me nervous. That made me scared. All right, Ian Cameron. All right, Ian Cameron. Because the tech guy thought he did something wrong. Man, no, it's just Ian Cameron pressing mute button. Ian Cameron, why'd you take this game? Tampa Bay finally gets a cover after a bunch of weeks of ATS losses.
Fortuitous cover. They did everything to blow it against Cleveland.
Right.
They're like, we don't want this game, Baker Mayfield and Cleveland. You can take it from us. No, I don't want Tampa here. I'm going to lay the 4 with Cincinnati, 4.5 out there, and over the total as well. I'm going to go side and total. Cincinnati -4, over 54. How's Tampa get stops this week? How do they get stops? Gerald McCoy's out. They haven't had Vernon Hargraves all year. Now you lose Quan Alexander, one of your best linebacker by far, to injury. You got to replace him now. And this is already a bad defense, a defense that's already fired their defensive coordinator, Mike Smith. Okay, they played good for a half last week against Cleveland. Back to that same old poor tackling, bad run defense, leaving guys wide open down the field. Bucs defense in the second half against Cleveland, which allowed them to come back in that game. Cincinnati off a dismal game against Kansas City. I don't really dock them too much for that loss. We know how good the Chiefs are and Patrick Mahomes and that offense, especially at home, Arrowhead on a Sunday night. I think this is bounce back time for Cincinnati. I think Andy Dalton and that offense is still very good with Tyler Boyd and A.J. Green. Joe Mixon's back at running back. They're going to do damage against this horrendous, and I mean horrendous, Tampa Bay Bucs defense in this game. Can Tampa trade fire for a bit with Winston? I think they can, but I think Cincinnati's eventually going to get those key stops down the stretch, pull away, win this game by enough of a margin to cover this number. So I'm going to take Cincinnati -4, and also going to take over 54 in this game.
Cincinnati -4, -110. The over is 54, -110. And if you combine those, maybe the safest play would be the Cincinnati team total over at 29. Al McMorty, what do you think?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I'm passing this game both side and total. I don't want any part of it whatsoever. Okay,
understandable. That makes sense to me. It does have high-scoring game written all over, but 54, a little bit up there. Could easily see this one sneaking under. Next game, we're going to cover a very interesting one. Baltimore against Carolina, right? The Ravens lost to the Saints. Rain might be expected here. The Panthers won as a dog at Philly, that huge game where they just came back out of nowhere and got the win. So you've got the Panthers roaring back from a late come-from-behind win. The Ravens off a frustrating loss to the Saints. Psychology is probably the biggest, psychological state is probably the biggest factor here to consider. Carolina right now is a small home dog. What do you think, Ian Cameron? Why'd you choose this game?
Well, I chose it because I remember a couple weeks ago, John Harbaugh and the Baltimore Ravens were off a loss at Tennessee. I took them, and they won comfortably, handily, shut out the Tennessee Titans in that game. And I'm going to go with Harbaugh off a loss again.
Mm-hmm.
He's been good in that role. He was great in that role against Tennessee. He's off a loss against New Orleans. Baltimore finally gave up not just one, but 2 touchdowns in the second half for the first time all season. But really, can you fault them? I mean, they're playing Drew Brees in that Saints offense, which has just been absolutely on fire, especially recently. I don't fault them too much for that. I think going on the road now, they've already taken some money, and I agree. I think they're a better team than Carolina. I know Carolina got the win last week, but that was Philadelphia coughing up a massive, and I mean massive, 17-0 lead. Carolina was very fortunate to come back. Give them credit; they didn't quit. They found a way to win, but they were getting outplayed and dominated for 3 quarters. They won 1 quarter in that football game, and now you're going to trust Cam Newton and this erratic offense to move the ball against one of the best defenses in the NFL. Even at home against this Baltimore defense, I think they're going to struggle to move the ball. I like Flacco and I like Harbaugh in a bounce-back spot. They've been good off a loss, and I think they will be again here. I'll take Baltimore in this short range to win, and a win should get us a cover as well.
All right, yeah, I'm actually would be more concerned about Carolina's struggling secondary here than the other things you said. Al McMorty, there has been a pretty big, significant market move in favor of Baltimore here. Open to pick them now up to 2 or 2.5. Is Baltimore an easy play here?
I'm not playing it.
Okay.
Ian's picking all these games I really could not care less about. If Carolina was on the road off that upset win over the defending Super Bowl champions, then I'd be going against Carolina. But they're back home, so I don't think they're going to have the life that they would have had otherwise. This is just a game I want to stay away from.
Okay, now let's talk about the London game. Philadelphia Eagles, Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, the Jacksonville Jaguars, you don't want to be too swayed by a recency bias, but they look like they got nothing, right? Have they quit on the coach? Maybe they have. Philly, of course, again, we just talked about it, dominating Carolina. Then it all came apart in the fourth quarter. This is a London game. Feels like a big bounce back spot for Philly. They have their issues. They can't run the ball. They have, their issues. But Jacksonville just looks like they got nothing and may have quit on the coach. Playing game in London under those conditions, not very promising. You're laying some points with Philly, but nothing huge. About 3, Ian Cameron, Philly an easy play here.
Yeah, I heard some people say Jacksonville has played in London before. They're used to the scenario. I say nuts to that noise. This is a different Jacksonville team right now. They're in total disarray. That was supposed to be their home run situation last week against Houston. Desperate off a couple of bad performances against KC and Dallas, at home, division rival, Houston Texans, time to right the ship, and they couldn't have played worse. They couldn't have come up any more lame than they did in that football game. And Blake Bortles coughs the ball up twice early on and just sets the tone for the entire day. Now you've got a locker room in shambles, finger pointing at each other, finger pointing at the coach. Why is Blake Bortles starting again this week when Cody Kessler actually came into that game and gave us a spark last week in the second half? This is a team in complete and utter disarray. And I have no problem going ahead right now and laying a short 3 with Philadelphia in this game. Philadelphia's not playing great, but their locker room's not splintered. They're just not playing great right now. They can correct it. Again, they played 3 great quarters against Carolina, 1 bad one. They can bounce back from that, and this team is just in complete and utter shambles as far as I'm concerned. On the field, their defense is just playing lousy right now, Jacksonville, and now there's finger pointing and locker room issues that are very real, in my opinion. I'll take Philly -3 in London town.
All right. It seems like the obvious play on paper. Al McMorty, I don't know if your database can factor in finger pointing and locker rooms in disarray, but seems like that's a big factor here. seems like Philly -3 has got to be an obvious play. What do you think, Al?
Yeah, unfortunately, my database is completely objective and not subjective. Right. One man's finger pointing might be anyway. I'm staying away from this game as well. You've got on one hand, you've got the Super Bowl champions coming off an upset loss, and I'd normally want to look at that situation, but then you have Jacksonville coming off back-to-back upset losses. I just think both teams, might be in bounce-back situations off what's been going on. You're certainly correct in that there is locker room discord in Jacksonville, but I never want to make assumptions as to how that's going to motivate or not motivate a team. I'm going to stay away from this game once again.
Okay, and the last game we're going to cover with you, Ian Cameron, we got to them all. New Orleans against Minnesota. Minnesota, of course, rolled the Jets. Saints came off the bye and beat Baltimore in that crazy game. Both teams have been covering ATS recently. I'm not sure what I think about this one. Big injury, though, to Vikings cornerback Xavier Rhodes. That's not looking very promising going up against New Orleans here. Ian Cameron, what do you like here? The Saints?
I am on the Saints
Mm-hmm.
here. And it's not just because of the miracle in Minneapolis last year. We all know that's still in the back of the minds of the New Orleans Saints. That was a gut-wrenching, horrible way to lose a playoff football game and have your season end last year when Stephon Diggs made that miraculous play to end the game and send Minnesota to the NFC Championship. It's not. It can't be just about situationals when I bet a game. It's got to be about fundamentals, the matchups as well. And I don't know how Minnesota's defense is going to stop New Orleans in this game. They're a banged-up defense. They've already without Andrew Sendejo in their secondary. Anthony Barr, linebacker, left the last game with an injury. Linval Joseph's questionable. Xavier Rhodes is questionable. Everson Griffin is just completely gone Coco Loco in his mind and hasn't played for a while now. This is a banged up defense. This is a shell of the Minnesota defense when they're fully healthy. And I think New Orleans, come on, we saw it last week.
Mm-hmm.
That was against a good Baltimore defense on the road. And in the second half, that Ravens defense had no answers for Drew Brees and that Saints offense and didn't have answers for Kamara and Ingram at the running back spot. I think this is set up well. It's an indoor, fast track, indoor surface there in Minnesota there in their new beautiful stadium. So this is a perfect type of surface and indoor situation for New Orleans. We know they thrive in those kind of environments. It's basically pick the straight up winner. You cash your ticket. I think New Orleans is going to win this football game, and I'll take them +1.
All right, the line has moved. It opened at 2.5, and it is a very split line right now. +1, -1, and pick 'em, all widely available. Ian Cameron's going to take New Orleans +1, -110. Seems like another good reasoning, fairly obvious play. What do you think, Al McMurdy?
Well, I had a big play on New Orleans in last year's game, and that was a clusterfuck ending, depending on your point spread, because the line ranged from like +4.5 to +6, depending on the opener and the close in that ball game. And then I think what it landed on 5 points from what my memory says. But this is a tough game to handicap. You've got both teams, for me as a technical handicapper, that I actually want to play against. You've got New Orleans coming off 4 straight covers, 5 straight wins. They've scored 24 or more points their last 4 ball games. Teams that win and cover and score 24 points or more, for 4 straight weeks. Those teams generally do not do well the next week, especially on the road. You've got Minnesota coming off a high-scoring win last week. They're off 3 straight up and against the spread wins. I've got angles going against Minnesota. The revenge situation here actually points for me toward Minnesota. I've got lots of angles on teams that won playoff games against their opponent the previous season that do extremely well in Minnesota's situation here at home. The fact that New Orleans is on the road with playoff revenge, that's not a positive thing. I'm going to stay away from this game. I think it's a great game to watch, and I'll let the other punters go at it.
Okay, Al McMurdy's going to pass on that one, but as always, giving us great insights into the angles and factors that he considers to be relevant. Ian Cameron, though, is going to take New Orleans +1. Al McMurdy, once again, 4 plays that he has shared with us. Northwestern +7, Michigan State -1, -115, Bears under 45.5, and Giants +1, -110. I am agreeing with Al McMurdy on Michigan State -1, -115. I'm adding that to my official record. And Ian Cameron with a whole bunch of plays this week for us. Again, Ian Cameron's overall record in these shows, 37-24. That is against the spread. Very nice job, Ian Cameron. And this week, Ian Cameron has given us Texas A&M +2.5, Army +2, USC -6, UTEP +16, Northwestern +7, Bears over 44.5 -115, Louisiana Tech +3.5, UNC +9, Air Force +9.5, Cincinnati -4, Tampa Bay Cincinnati over 54, Baltimore Ravens -2, Eagles -3, and New Orleans Saints +1. Did I get it all, Ian Cameron?
That sounds about right.
All right. Al McMurdy, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, your insights are so valuable on every game, even when you pass, and that's what you do at your website, bigal.com. Tell us about that before we let you go.
Sure, Peter. Folks can go to bigal.com and get all of my best selections. Actually, we have 15 handicappers at the website, so you can get terrific plays from people like myself, Larry Ness, Tom Stryker, ASA, Doc Sports, and on and on. And then we have complimentary selections every day at the website. We have 4 free plays every day, 2 from myself, 1 from Larry Ness, 1 from Power Sports. Just go to bigal.com and you can go to our homepage as well as the free picks page to get that complimentary selections.
Ian Cameron and Al McMurdy, thanks so much. Talk to you again next week.
Thanks, guys.
See you, everyone. Good luck.
Thanks, Ian. Good luck to you too.